Welcome everyone, I'm Dale and this is Cinema Historia. A Quaker family, Confederate troops, and an approaching battle. This week we're going back to 1956 for a Civil War drama called Friendly Persuasion, starring Gary Cooper, Dorothy McGuire, and Anthony Perkins. And this is directed by and produced by William Wyler. So where does our story begin this week? Well, it begins in Jennings County, Indiana in 1862. Jess Birdwell, played by Gary Cooper, is a farmer whose Quaker religion conflicts with his love of music and horse racing. Jess's wife Eliza, played by Dorothy McGuire, a Quaker minister, is deeply religious and refuses to engage in violence. Jess's daughter Maddie wants to remain a Quaker, but against her mother's wishes, has fallen in love with dashing cavalry officer guard Jordan. Jess's youngest child, Little Jess, is a feisty child whose comical feud with his mother's pet goose causes her a lot of heartache. And Jess's oldest son, Josh, played by Anthony Perkins, is torn between his hatred of violence and wanting to protect his family by joining the Civil War. The Birdwell family have their Sunday meeting with their neighbor Sam Jordan and other Quaker families at the nearby Methodist Church. When a Union officer interrupts their meeting, the mood shifts dramatically. He asks how the Quaker family can stand by when their houses will be looted and their families terrorized by approaching Confederate troops. When confronted with the question of being afraid to fight and asking for volunteers, the Quakers stand their ground against violence. The Quakers in the coming days maintain their ways, even though they are always reminded that the Confederate Army is drawing closer. One day, Jess is cultivating his field and notices an immense cloud of smoke produced by burning buildings. Josh soon arrives and tells them the neighboring community has been reduced to ash and corpses. So, does Josh enlist before the Confederate Army destroys their family? Will Eliza turn her back on religion to save their farm? And will the Quaker families unite against an intruding army? Based on the 1945 novel The Friendly Persuasion by Jessamine West. This film was originally released with no screenwriting credit because Michael Wilson was on the Hollywood blacklist. His credit was restored in 1996. In 1957, though, this film achieved 11 nominations and 5 wins, including Cannes Film Festival's Golden Palm Award for director William Wyler, the Golden Globe Award for Best Promising Newcomer for Anthony Perkins, the Writers Guild of America Award for Best Written American Drama for Michael Wilson, and the National Board of Review Award in 1956 for Best Actress for Dorothy McGuire, and the Friendly Persuasion film to receive the award for Top 10 Films. Very much deserved. And the trivia question this week: was the battle depicted in this film based on an actual battle? Was the battle depicted in this film actually based on an actual battle? So, a little more history and the answer to our trivia question coming up next. Now, since our film involves the Civil War, I thought it might be interesting to talk about a weapon they used during that time, and that was the 12-pound cannon. So the 12-pound cannon is a cannon that fires 12-pound projectiles from its barrel, as well as chain shot, shrapnel, and later shells and canister shot. It was commonly used during the Napoleonic Wars of 1799 to 1815. At this time, 12-pounders were the largest caliber of long-barreled field pieces and were used both at long range against troop concentrations using round shot and against attacking infantry and cavalry using canister shot. Later redesigned 12-pounders were named after Napoleon III and found heavy use during the American Civil War between 1861 and 1865. 12-pounders were also used on naval vessels of various sizes. Unlike their land-based cousins, such weapons were considered light by naval standards. Even though their main weapons used larger 24 and 32-pound cannons, 12-pounders were commonly found on British ships such as the HMS Victory. The Mountain Howitzer, a 53-inch howitzer capable of being disassembled and carried by 3 horses, was popular. It was introduced to the U.S. military in 1837 and was known as the M1841. After the Civil War, the Parrott rifle and newer, more powerful Columbiads, such as the Rodman gun, were being produced, and the 12-pounder later became field guns commonly used in Confederate hands. And I recently found a 12-pound cannon near my area in Cobourg, Ontario, Canada, and this is a carriage field 12-pounder. First introduced by Armstrong Elliwick of the Ordnance Company in England in 1881, this 12-pounder was taken into general use by the Royal Artillery in 1894. It was introduced into the Canadian service in 1896, and by 1897 there were 6 Canadian batteries with the gun. The 12-pounder remained in service until 1914 when the 18-pounder was adopted. The 12-pounder was last used in Canada in 1938 at the Dominion Artillery Observation of Fire competitions. And this weapon is on loan from the Royal Canadian Artillery Museum in Manitoba, which was restored by the Department of National Defence, its 202 workshop in June of 1981. Interesting. And the answer to our trivia question this week was the battle depicted in this film based on an actual battle. Yes, it was. In 1863, 450 members of the Indiana Home Guard met Morgan's Raiders in battle south of the town of Corydon. The Home Guard held off the Raiders for a half an hour, but being outnumbered by 2,400, the Home Guard was forced to retreat. During the battle, the Raiders suffered 11 men killed and 33 wounded, while the Indiana Home Guard lost only 5 men. The Morgan Raiders occupied the town for a single afternoon before eventually moving on. And I have to be moving on as well. I hope you like my videos, and if you do, could you help my battle and hit the subscribe button? I'm Dale, and this has been Cinema Historia. Thanks for watching, everyone.